when my dad stood up at my wedding dinner and said, "You're not part of this family anymore." I thought it was a prank. It wasn't. It was real. It was loud. And it shattered every illusion I ever had about the people who raised me. But what they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment my whole life. And by the time I was done with them, my last name wasn't just respected, it was feared. Let me back it up. My name's Amanda. I'm 27, born and raised in suburban Pennsylvania. The kind of place where people wave when they pass each other, but talk trash the second you're gone. I was always the quiet one. Not because I had nothing to say, because I learned early that in my house, talking back was dangerous. My dad, Robert, was one of those self-made men who never let you forget it. He grew up poor, built a chain of hardware stores, and made it very clear that we existed in his world, not the other way around. My mom, Lynn, she floated somewhere between iced tea, garden club meetings, and pretending not to notice the bruises I hid with long sleeves. I had a brother, Tyler, golden child, football scholarship, drove a lifted truck before he could parallel park. If I breathed too loud, I was too emotional. If Tyler crashed mom's car while drunk, boys will be boys. Growing up, I had one dream: get out. I studied hard, top of my class, skipped every party. I wanted more than my dad's dusty store aisles and outdated mindset. And when I got into Cornell on a full ride, I thought, maybe they'd finally see me. They didn't. Dad shrugged and said, "Good. Maybe now you'll stop being a financial burden." But I didn't cry. Not in front of him. 4 years of lectures, internships, ramen noodles, and 2 jobs later, I graduated with honors in computer science and a minor in business. And during all of that, I met Jake. Jake was nothing like the men in my family. He listened, he asked questions, he respected me, even when I didn't know how to receive it. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. He even asked my dad's permission. You know what Robert said? Sure, she was never really ours anyway. Jake thought he was joking. I didn't. We planned a small wedding, not because we couldn't afford more, but because I didn't want to pretend. I almost didn't invite them, but I did, out of some desperate, twisted hope that maybe they'd show up and surprise me. Boy, did they. The rehearsal dinner was at Jake's parents' place. Classy, backyard vibe. String lights, good food, warm hugs, laughter, and then Robert showed up, late, loud, reeking of scotch. He didn't say hi, didn't look at Jake, walked straight to the table, clinked his glass with a knife, and said, "I have something to say." My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. Jake squeezed my hand under the table. Robert looked me dead in the eye, raised his glass, and said, "To Amanda. You might have fooled everyone here, but not us. You're not our family anymore." Silence. You could hear the cicadas stop. No one moved. Jake's mom gasped. Someone dropped a fork. And me, I smiled. Because in that moment, I realized this wasn't pain. This was permission. Permission to stop apologizing, to stop shrinking, to stop begging people who never wanted to love me the way I deserved. I stood up, took a breath, and said, "Thanks for making this easy." Then I walked out. I didn't cry that night. Instead, I opened my laptop and began something that would change everything. I wasn't just going to prove them wrong. I was going to erase every excuse they ever made for underestimating me. Over the next 6 months, I built something no one saw coming. Something that would make the name Amanda Collins go from wedding disaster to Wall Street headline. But first, I had to disappear. When I left that rehearsal dinner, I wasn't walking away from a family. I was walking into a war. They didn't know it yet, but they just lit a fire that had been smoldering for 27 years. And I wasn't going to burn alone. So I did what I always do when my world breaks apart. I built something new. I moved back into our tiny apartment with Jake, canceled the wedding ceremony and went quiet. Not sad, not bitter, focused. Jake wanted to elope. I told him to give me 6 months. He thought I needed to heal. What I really needed was to destroy the idea that their approval had anything to do with my worth. I poured every waking hour into the startup idea I'd been sitting on since college. See, during school, I'd interned at a data company and noticed something weird. Small businesses, especially minority and women-owned ones, kept getting locked out of supply chains because of outdated logistics software. They were paying insane premiums just to move product because they couldn't access the same data insights the big guys had. I saw a gap, a broken system, and like every underestimated girl with nothing to lose, I built the damn bridge. I called the project Nova Chain, a supply chain optimization platform that actually worked for small players, not just dashboards and analytics fluff. Real-time data, predictive shipping costs, AI-powered vendor matching, all of it clean, fast, and accessible. But here's the catch. I didn't have funding. No VCs were going to take a chance on a woman with 0 gray hair and no famous co-founders. So I started small. I posted in Facebook groups. I cold emailed women in e-commerce. I sent personal videos to 300 boutique owners explaining what NovaChain could do. The first month, crickets. Second month, 2 signups. By month 3, 32 paying clients. And then one day, I woke up to a DM from a woman named Sheila. She ran a multi-million-dollar wellness brand and was bleeding money because of shipping delays. She scheduled a call. Halfway through the demo, she paused and said, "Where the hell have you been? This is exactly what we need." She signed a contract on the spot. That deal alone paid our rent for 6 months. I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes after she wired the money. That was the beginning. I used Sheila's case study to land more clients, started hiring a small remote team, outsourced development to a guy in Texas, and a data scientist in Montreal. I lived on energy drinks, Zoom calls, and spite. And in the middle of all of that, not a word from my family, no text, no call, not even a Facebook like. Nothing. They'd cut me off completely. And honestly, that helped because there's something liberating about being disowned. You stop trying to please people. You stop asking for seats at tables built to exclude you. Instead, you build your own damn table. And that's exactly what I did. By month 6, NovaChain hit $100,000 in monthly recurring revenue. I launched a beta app, brought on 2 advisors, even got featured in a TechCrunch article titled The Supply Chain Whisperer, How One Woman Quietly Took Over Logistics. Jake printed it and framed it. That same week, I reproposed to him in a dive bar with a $20 plastic ring. He laughed, said yes, and kissed me so hard the bartender gave us free tequila shots. We got married in a courthouse 2 weeks later. My dress, $80 on sale. My smile, priceless. But just when I thought I was done with the past, it came knocking. Literally. One rainy Thursday, I opened the door to find my mom standing there, hair soaking wet, eyes red. I hadn't seen her since the dinner. She looked smaller, like her power had deflated. She held out a letter. Her hands shook. "Read this, please." Then she walked away. I sat on the couch, opened the envelope, and started reading. It wasn't from her. It was from my father, Robert, the man who declared I wasn't family in front of a room full of people I loved. The letter was short, cold, but what it said changed everything. He was dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months left, maybe less. And the kicker? He wanted to meet, not to apologize, to ask for help. Turns out, the chain of hardware stores, the empire he built, was collapsing. Bad investments, supply issues, staff walkouts. He'd heard about NovaChain. He wanted to know if I could save it. I read that letter 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, because I couldn't believe the man who humiliated me in front of my future in-laws was now asking me to save the very thing he worshipped more than his family, his legacy. At first, I laughed, like full belly laughed. Jake watched me from across the room like I was losing it. Maybe I was, but the irony, it was too perfect. Robert Collins, the man who once told me business was no place for soft-hearted girls, was now begging one to rescue his. Jake asked me what I was going to do. I told him, I'm going to burn down the fantasy he built and make something better. But I wasn't going to do it for him. I was going to do it for every girl who sat through dinner pretending not to cry, for every woman dismissed in meetings, for every daughter told she wasn't part of the family just because she dared to want more. So I went to see him. The meeting was at his office, the same one he used to forbid me from entering as a teenager. He looked older, thinner, defeated. His oxygen tank hissed faintly in the corner as I walked in. He didn't smile, didn't apologize, just motioned for me to sit and said, "You built a hell of a company. I need that brain of yours." I didn't flinch. I said, "It's not just my brain, it's my name now." He blinked, confused. I leaned forward and said it slow. "You don't get Amanda Collins. You get Amanda Jameson." I took Jake's name, because I don't owe yours anything. He didn't react, just slid a stack of financial reports across the desk. The business was bleeding. Inventory nightmares, no digital infrastructure, suppliers ghosting them. I could fix it, easily, but not for free. So I made him an offer. I'd take over the logistics and digitize his supply chain using Nova Chain's infrastructure. In return, I wanted 51% of Collins' hardware. I wanted control. He looked like I'd slapped him. "You want majority ownership of my company?" I smiled. "No, Robert. I want ownership of my company, because without me, you'll be bankrupt by Christmas." Silence. Then he nodded, just once. We signed the paperwork that same week. Suddenly, I was CEO of a legacy hardware chain with decades of dust and total freedom to rebuild it my way. First thing I did, fired his entire executive board. They were all buddies from golf. Half of them didn't know how to log into Slack. Next, I rebranded the chain. No more Collins Hardware. I renamed it Forge, a place where things were built, rebuilt, reinvented. We launched a new e-commerce site, partnered with local manufacturers, implemented Nova Chain's backend to fix shipping and warehouse ops. Within 3 months, profit margins went from 7% to 22%. By month 5, we launched Forge Labs, pop-up retail spaces for emerging brands to test physical products in small towns with hardware overlap. Generation Z and boomers under one roof. You'd be surprised how much they can learn from each other. We became a case study in modern retail reinvention. CNBC did a segment. Wired ran a profile. And suddenly, I wasn't just the girl who got disowned at dinner. I was the woman turning failing legacy businesses into digital empires. People started calling me the quiet storm of commerce. And my dad? He watched it all from a hospital bed. He didn't say much the few times I visited, but one afternoon, he asked me something. Not as a CEO, as a daughter. He said, "Why did you do it?" And I told him the truth. Because I wanted to prove that I was never the problem. You were just too small to see how big I could be. He didn't reply. He just looked away. I left the room. That was the last time I saw him alive. He passed 2 weeks later. The funeral was small. Tyler showed up late, hungover, and asked if he'd inherited the company. I said, "No, just the unpaid taxes." He cursed at me in front of the priest. Classic. After the funeral, my mom approached me. She held my hand, tears running down her face, and whispered, "I should have protected you. I'm sorry." And you know what? That apology mattered more than all the press features and contracts in the world. Because healing doesn't come from revenge, it comes from recognition. And even though I'd spent years building an empire from my trauma, what I really wanted was for someone to finally see me. Not as a problem, not as a disappointment, but as the woman I chose to become. After the funeral, life didn't slow down. If anything, it sped up. Legacy, grief, ambition, they don't take turns. They pile on at once and dare you to drop the ball. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving to prove a point. I was thriving because I finally knew my worth. The same week my father was buried, Forge was approached by a private equity firm. They wanted to invest, not buy us out. Invest. They saw the growth, the press, the cultural shift. They saw a woman-led logistics revolution with a story strong enough to sell. And maybe part of them saw a redemption arc. I sat across from their partners, middle-aged men in sleek suits, and told them exactly what I wanted. I'd take their money, but I wouldn't dilute majority control. Forge would stay in my name. So would NovaChain, and in every interview, press release, or feature. They wouldn't whitewash the story. This wasn't just about modernization. It was about taking back power that had been stolen, ignored, or flat out erased for generations. They agreed. $12 million in growth capital. We hired 40 new employees within 2 months, opened regional hubs, partnered with 3 national brands. And by the time our story hit Forbes, people who once side-eyed me at family gatherings were suddenly sharing the article like they always believed in me. It was funny. I'd spent years craving validation from the people in my own bloodline, only to realize that sometimes legacy isn't passed down. It's built from scratch. Jake and I bought our first house together in upstate New York. Quiet, lots of trees. He turned the garage into a music studio. I turned the attic into my command center. We talk about kids sometimes, and I think about what I'll tell them. I won't hide the story. I won't sugarcoat it. They'll know their grandpa said I wasn't part of the family. They'll know I cried, fought, built, and won. And they'll know, deep in their bones, that being disowned doesn't mean being broken. It just means you get to rebuild without anyone else's blueprint. Last Christmas, we hosted dinner at our place. Jake cooked. I set the table. And when my mom walked in with a small present, eyes cautious, voice soft, I let her hug me. It wasn't perfect. It'll never be. But healing isn't about perfection. It's about choosing peace, one choice at a time. She handed me the box and said, "I thought you might want this." I opened it. Inside was an old photo. Me, maybe 8 years old, standing in front of the original Collins hardware store. Dirt on my face, a toy hammer in my hand, smiling like I already knew the truth. "You always looked like a builder," she said. I smiled. I still am. And now I build differently. I invest in women-led startups. I mentor girls in tech. I teach them that rejection is a tool. Sharp, yes, but powerful if you know how to hold it. Because here's the real secret no one tells you. Legacy isn't inherited. It's forged from pain, from defiance, from moments that rip you apart and demand you come back stronger. So, yeah, my father stood at my wedding dinner and told the world I wasn't his family. But now I have a new one, built on love, respect, and hard damn work. And my last name may not be Collins anymore, but you better believe they still know it, because I turned my exile into an empire. and I did it all with no one's permission but my own.